Ashley, I'm just letting you know that I can't see the chat because I'm screaming from my mobile. So if there's
Okay.
any messages, you can.
Yeah, and you guys, as you guys come in, so I'm going to speak to the audience too. Say, hey, let's know as comments come in. Unless we're like really in something, I will go ahead and post comments on there, and then any comments that are questions, I'll bring back up so we can reference them back. But yes, I will monitor time, and I will monitor comments as well to make sure that they get on there. So guys, please feel free to interact and discuss without having to worry about watching all that. So hey, you guys, as you come in, I'm just paying attention to the comments. Say hey, let us know where you're coming from. If you're coming from Facebook, YouTube, just let us know. And Angela, so Angela says, oh, hey. All right. She said, hey. All right, you guys. So I'm really excited about this panel. And before I jump into my intro, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what this is. We are discussing in this panel and the next two panels, actually, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and why those two energies are so important, how to begin balancing them, and why it is in fact important to bring balance to these energies within ourselves, as well as these energies within the collective. So I've got a wonderful panel of amazing experts and individuals on here to talk about those two specific energies and what they can do for you and how they work within you. So before I go any further, I'm going to drop into my intro and I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves and we will get going. So hello and welcome to the TUF Woman Roundtable. This is the table where I invite some amazing people to pull up a seat to the table, join in together in creating epic conversation. At TUF Woman, I believe that all people have the power within themselves to live life authentically, free from fear, confident in who they are, and empowered to go out and live a life that sets their soul on fire. I also believe that by one person showing up in their power, we give other people permission to step into their own power, thus giving us the opportunity to rise together. It is through this joined rising that we move ourselves and humanity forward to a more beautiful way of living and being. So pull up a seat, tune in, and join us to create epic conversation that moves and remind everyone of how truly powerful we are within. All right. Hello, hello, hello. All right, you guys. And whoever catches this on the replay, hashtag replay. But without further ado, I would love to introduce my panel to you. As you guys know, I've already introduced myself. My name is Ashley Ingram. I'm the host of this table and the CEO of TUF Woman Coaching Company. I help women become unstuck in their life and become unfuckwittable so that they can go out there and create epic lives that set their soul on fire. So my next guest is Veronica. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, so I'm Veronica Vaderi and I'm a relational literacy educator. So I help people to find balance and growth through their relationships. And the way I'm doing it is by teaching key relational and communication skills. So I run workshops, I run seminars, and now webinars. And because love is not enough, as you all know, we need skills. And that's what I do. I teach those skills.
Awesome. Tomas?
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Tomas Garza. I am a podcast host and podcast producer. I'm also, as Ashley mentioned, a healer and a meditation instructor.
Awesome. Bradford?
Hey, I'm Bradford Scott Walton. I am a modern masculine mentor. I work with both men and women to help them understand how the masculine feminine energetic dynamic works within them and how that affects not only their own self-image, but how it impacts all of their relationships and how the world shows up for them. I also do some energy work, and I have an art therapy thing that I do for women around body image as well. Basically, all of it comes down to healing the feminine energy so that everything comes back into balance.
Okay, awesome. And TJ?
And I'm Travis Shade, also known as TJ, and I don't do anything as interesting as you other guys, but I'm a cook right now, and I'm here to just give my opinion as well.
Awesome. All right. No, listen, hey, everybody is integral in this wheel of life. We're all very important. And TJ, you're actually an essential employee, so don't let your don't feel unimportant here at all. You are so essential. Okay, you guys. So what I really want to discuss first and foremost going forward is the divine masculine and the feminine. This is not a topic that is as widely discussed. In fact, for those of us who are in the online world, energy is discussed, I believe, but we don't really discuss the duality of our energy, like why it's important to understand the duality of these two energies within us. What does it mean to be imbalanced in these energies? For me, especially, I've had to go back. I was discussing this with TJ and start doing shadow work to understand why my masculine was so dominant and so bullyish and so imbalanced, and whereas my feminine was not present at all. So it's going into that journey that made me realize there was so much that I was not learning. So today, you guys, I really want to open this up to discussing, first and foremost, what is the divine masculine and the divine feminine? And if it's okay with everybody, I would like to first start off with Bradford, if you would discuss a little bit about what it is that you teach as far as the divine masculine and feminine.
Well, for me, the understanding that I've come to is that the feminine is responsible for our state of being. It's a place of creation and nurturing, and that energy informs the masculine on its actions, what action it takes, how things are done in the world. So you've got the being and the doing, and that's all. It's in a constant feedback loop, because it takes a state of being to create an action, and then once the action happens, then it also creates a feeling that comes back, right, to whatever the result of that action was. So it's constantly feeding itself. And right now, for I think definitely most men, and I think a lot of women as well, they have a masculine that is constantly compensating for a compromised feminine. So it ends up being in an elevated, excited state instead of a relaxed state, because it's always trying to protect that tender spot that nobody can have access to because it's not safe. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the healthier the feminine is, and and it really comes down to the story of what that energy is for you and what the value is that you hold in that energy. The better that feedback loop becomes, because the healthier the feminine is, the more the masculine can relax, and then the actions that happen through the masculine are more aligned with a positive frame of reference to begin with in that state of being. So then the feelings that come back are even better. So it becomes more of an upward spiral, right, of feedback continuing to grow the positive energy in that cycle.
Awesome. All right. And you talked about the feminine and the what is it? The feminine, the part that's not safe. So speaking into that feminine, I want to ask each of you individually, how has the divine masculine and the balance or imbalance of these energies played out within your own personal life and your own personal journey? And I'll start with Veronica. How has the duality and that balance or imbalance you've had within your life really played out within your own journey? Because I think that context is really going to help within this conversation.
Okay, so for me, it played out well. I've paid a very high price for not understanding how the duality works in the relationship by having my first divorce, and that's where I figured out, okay, so love is not enough. We really need to know how to relate to each other, and masculine and feminine is the energies that we have, both of them within us. And it's something, so each and one of us have masculine and feminine. So imagine in a relationship where you assume there are two people in a relationship, in reality there are actually four people in the relationship, and that makes that dance very difficult, because it has to be a dance. It cannot be masculine clashing with another masculine and feminine clashing with another feminine. And when I had my first major relationship, my marriage failing as a result of me not understanding those dualities, it's where I began my journey on discovering what is it that makes it work. And that's where I started to find out that the basis, the absolutely basics for each and one of us to understand if we want to have a healthy relationship with another human, is to ensure that our energies do not clash in every single interaction. So if I'm in my masculine mode, my partner needs to be in my feminine to complement me, not to clash with me. And if I'm in my feminine, my partner needs to be in their masculine, not to clash with me. And this is not necessarily gender related, though in most cases women find feminine energy as the most comfortable primary energy, and men find the masculine energy as the more comfortable energy. But having said that, there are feminine energy men who are being pushed by the society to operate in a mode that is not their primary mode and therefore not comfortable. And there are masculine energy women for who masculine mode of operating is much more comfortable, but again, by the society norms, they are pushed to behave or to act feminine, and again, they're just going against somebody's natural predisposition.
And I understand that from a very heart center space. You're talking to a very masculine base female. So for a very long time, it's easy for women, especially, to be pushed into a space of having to show up in a masculine world. So, Tomas, I want to ask you the same question. How has that duality and that balance or imbalance played out in your life as far as those energies?
Yeah, well, as far as the imbalance goes, I'm also divorced, and the imbalance of those energies is a large reason why. And I think that we begin to pick up imbalances from our family, from our nuclear family unit, from our friends, from other kids in school. We just learn from a young age. And if we don't have a very grounded, very centered, more balanced role models, then we go forth into adulthood and act out the same things that we've seen. In other words, we do what smells familiar. And if there were a lot of imbalances, then that's going to show in a marriage. It's going to show in relationships, and maybe it's a lot of failed relationships for a lot of people. So, the balance has, for me, shown up more in time as a result of my own inner work, which I really think is the only way to get that to go. But I had a long way to go when I was younger. Quite a long way.
I understand. Yeah, I think we all have a long way to go from when we're younger, and opening ourselves up to a lot of the inner work is very key and pivotal to helping us move forward into all this. And Bradford, I would be interested to, because of your background, to also ask you, how has this energetic work formulated in your own life and leading you into doing this? Like, how has these energies shown up for you, and whether it be imbalance or balance?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I came into understanding is that it's been about 7,000 years since we had either energetically balanced or feminine energetic dominant societies on this planet. So for that length of time, everybody comes into the world fresh and with the concept that they can be the full expression of themselves. But at some point, they get introduced to the fact that that's not how things work here, because we're in a masculine dominant paradigm, and the feminine is not really welcome in the same way that the masculine is. It's not valued the same way. So everybody gets indoctrinated into that. Everybody has their moment where they find out that they can't actually express themselves. And in a lot of cases, when you talk about, particularly with women and the queer community, they also find out that not only can they not express themselves, but it actually can be life-threatening to be really embodied in the feminine in that way. And then for me in my life, I always had like a really strong access to my feminine, but I also, I was always really pretty balanced in those two for me, because I really enjoyed playing sports and I was very competitive and masculine in that. But I also was very emotional and vulnerable. And so I had lots of female friends who would share with me what was happening in their world. And then I also had lots of guy friends who we'd pal around and, do guy things and play sports and all that stuff. But particularly, and like I was coming of age in the 80s, and particularly at that time, there was a very strong story about what the ideal was, what you're looking for, what women were looking for in a man, a very strong masculine profile. And so the women that I was friends with loved me. They thought I was great, but I didn't embody that kind of masculine that they had, the story that was what they were looking for. So I didn't end up doing a whole lot of dating as I was coming up through high school and stuff. And then all of my guy friends, we were super tight, but I never really quite was one of them, because they were also slightly threatened by the fact that my feminine was more available, right? So that's just, it's a constant process of navigating that thing. And like Veronica was saying, everybody has both of those energies within them, and everybody are basically set at different levels. Some are higher on one side and some are higher on the other, and that also can fluctuate based on a given situation. And so it's just you have to just constantly keep coming back into an awareness of how things are making you feel and understanding why that is, so that the actions that you take are much more informed and a response as opposed to a reaction.
I love that. And I've actually got a great question after this, because I have a very good idea of where I want to go with this. But TJ, I have to ask you now. So how have these energies shown up in your own life? And how do you feel it's acted, whether out of a state of balance or imbalance within your life?
Well, they come up at all times. It started when I was young, because I was raised by a single mother, and I had all sisters, all girl cousins, and I was in between my grandmother's house all the time. So the lot of feminine energies were there present, just because that's what you see all the time. See the nurturing, the caring, the so-called stereotypical side of femininity. And so you see all that. So you latch on to some of those aspects of things that you carry on, the want to have a family, the wanting to do things like that. And then, since I also dealt with a music scenario once in my life, you go into those scenarios, and those are filled with just masculine connotations, just topics, just all masculine stuff, pretty much. So you're keeping your feelings hid, and you're pretty much just see what's going on with guy stuff. You're lost in both worlds. It's kind of like what he said. You're not dealing with either set of friends, the females or the males, because you're kind of lost in both sets. Just wanting to be able to pretty much be yourself without having to like show either side more than the other. Just wanting to be you without having to be one of those labels, pretty much. But it comes up all the time. You always fall into that. It's a daily thing, whether you're walking into a store, or you're just dealing with a bunch of ladies when you're inside of a restaurant and you're cooking with one another. It's how everyone communicates with one another. Men communicate with men different. Women communicate with women different. We all communicate different. So you're always in the game, like almost every second of.
Oh, he froze. All right. Holy cow. Hopefully he comes back. Oh, there you are. Okay, TJ. All right. So I really want to touch first on what happens when these energies are in an imbalance. And really probably this means touching base first and foremost on what do each of the individual energies look like. So if anybody would love to jump in here and give a frame of reference as to what is the divine feminine embody? So what is your divine feminine energy embody, and what is your divine masculine energy embody? Because again, I really want to give people a really good basis of knowledge here. So a lot of people probably potentially heard of the divine feminine and masculine, but we don't actually hear of what it means to be embodied in those energies. So I would open the panel up to anybody who would like to take the floor with this one and explain a little bit about what is the embodiment of the divine feminine and what is the embodiment of the divine masculine.
I can get it. Okay, so when we look at the masculine and feminine energy, I'm not sure what divine means in in relation to those energies. So you might, I invite other panelists to define the divine part of that, because I'm more into psychology and less into spirituality. But for me, masculine energy, think of it as an operational mode. So it's easier to understand what the energy is if you think of the masculine energy as a hunter. So it's the energy that goes after the goal. It's the energy that really takes action. It's the leader. It's the energy that gets things done. It's the energy that is very single focused. It's the energy that is thinking, and it's the energy that needs respect. Now, feminine energy, on the other hand, is the energy that is following, is the energy, at the operation mode. Think of it, this is hunter and this is gatherer. So it's the energy that is nurturing, it's the energy that is collecting things, it's caring, it's flowing, and it's the energy that needs to be cherished versus respecting, and it's the energy that feels versus think, and it's the energy that doesn't do deadlines very well. It's more focused on nurturing side of things, on bringing joy, and these are the two operation modes that we all have. And yes, they do need to be balanced, but by balance, depending on the situation, we're going to be, for example, if I go to work and I teach, or if I'm a mother and I discipline my kids, I'm in a very masculine role because I have the deadlines to meet, I have the projects to complete, I have kids to discipline. Not that I have kids, but I'm just providing examples. But if I am in, if I'm playing, if I'm having fun, if I'm doing things that are, if I'm relating to other people, if I'm connecting, then I'm in my feminine. And that's when I feel I'm in my feminine. When I think, I'm in my masculine. So we have those operation modes. And as I said, by balance, I don't mean we have to have it 50-50, because when we have it 50-50, is when we start having problems, because we can't relate to people. It becomes much more difficult to have that dance. Whereas when we align with ourselves, regardless of our gender, when we really get that high level of self-awareness, and when we really understand which one for us feels comfortable most of the time. So of course it's going to vary from this, it's situational, but which one is more what I call primary. And when we understand what is our primary energy, as long as we have the other one not completely, disregarded, because if I'm my feminine, I will never get things done. Or if my masculine all the time, I'll be a dictator, I'll just be a cruel serial killer of some sort. So it has to have, masculine energy has to have compassion, and that's the balance, and the feminine energy needs to have a masculine in that. But I would suggest the good balance is 80-20. I wouldn't aim for 50-50. So that's hopefully explain things a little bit about what it is. But if somebody can bring divinity into it, by all means, you can add to what I've said.
Okay, so that would be my next question then. Would anybody like to interject on what, and Lisa says she loves your share. Oh, well, that's that one. Lisa says she loves your share, Veronica, but I would open the floor for anybody who would like to discuss maybe what the divine aspect of it is, because yeah, there is masculine and feminine, and I'm used to hearing the divine masculine, divine feminine, which I guess if I was going to define it, would look to me like that highest embodiment of both your energies. But again, I would love to open the floor and the panel to anybody who would maybe like to have a little bit of a deeper dive into what the divine aspect of those energies are.
Okay, I'll jump in. Do you want to go?
No, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. One thing I just wanted to add on to what Veronica was saying real quick is that for me, having balanced energies is not about what level they're set at. It's not about which one is more predominant or more primary. The balance comes in the story that we have again about each one. So if your story about your masculine is really good and you feel really strong about that, but your story about your feminine is not good, then that's out of balance. It doesn't matter whether which one is primary. The thing is to actually have a healthy relationship with both of those energies. And then for me, the divine thing, you know, I mean, the masculine feminine energetic equation for me is like the root of everything. It is at the root of everything. It's the reason for everything that doesn't work well or feel good on the planet. It's why our financial systems and political systems and the way we treat the environment, all of those things are set up based on the current system and the current paradigm of those energies. So you can't get anything really more powerful than that to me. And I don't really usually tag them as being divine, although I consider them to be the primary energetic situation that controls how everything operates.
Tomas?
Yeah, I was going to say, Bradford, I'm glad you went ahead there, because I was going to say I can't offer anything on divine masculine versus divine feminine. This is a concept that doesn't mean an awful lot to me, I've got to confess. And I'm a deeply spiritual person, and I've been meditating for 35 plus years. And we're both. So what exactly is meant by divine masculine and divine feminine? Well, I don't know. I mean, if you scroll people's Facebook feeds, you'll see dozens of different interpretations of that as people go through their own experiences and their own journeys and try to find a balance, which I agree doesn't have to be 50-50 for people. I've never really thought about it in terms of a numerical balance. I just know what it means in my own life, and the term, if someone on the panel wants to offer a definition of what that actually means, it's news to me, because for me it's all about, as a meditator, it's all about old school spirituality, where you sit down and start paying attention to all of your crap coming up. Insert a different word for crap if y'all want.
No, I like it. Well, and it's funny, and this is actually my bridge into it. We, like, before we all got on this, was discussing shadow work and what it means to dive into that shadow work. So I feel like that for me, I guess the divine aspect came because that's how I've always heard it. Kind of when I hear about the energies, I hear that word tagged on it. So maybe it's not so much that there's because I believe that, I think especially something that working with shadow work is coming to terms with your own divinity of being a divine power, being a divine being. So I think for me that's where that came from. So I love that that's why I love these panels, because it's such a great space to bring the other perspectives and learn something in the process myself. So that's why I always like to leave these open. for you guys to really bring it out, and it bridges off into the next part. I would like, what does it look like when these energies are in an imbalance? First and foremost, I think that that's the most important part, because Bradford, you touched on everything starts from that we're going through these moments starts from those energies and that imbalance that we have in the collective at this moment. We see a lot of disruption. We see that we're coming out of this very patriarchal based, masculine based society. And Veronica, you probably can relate. Being a woman in this society is not an easy thing to be. It is not. Bradford, you touched on this too. It's been, you said 7,000 years since we've been in a feminine based society. So being a woman in this society is not the easiest thing to be. And I can't even speak for the other, like, the different minorities and races and everything. And speaking from being a white woman, it's not easy. So like I said, I can't speak for everybody else, but the level of oppression you feel as a woman is very real. So I would like to ask, what does it look like when these energies are imbalanced within ourselves as well as within the collective? And I would like to open that actually up with Tomas first. If you would like to really dive into what does it look like when these energies are at an imbalance?
Okay. Well, when the energies are in an imbalance on the individual level where everything starts, that's the building block, is the work that we're doing on ourselves, because we're always teaching. This is something that I continuously say on my show and that I've written about, taught about, is we're always teaching one another. So the question is, what are we showing them? Are we showing them peace? Are we showing them imbalance, right? Are we showing them separation? Are we showing them war? If an individual is at war with themselves, then they're going to show that and demonstrate that. And what we see in the collective at large is war, battle, divorce, strife. We see a polarized political climate. We see all kinds of polarized climates in the collective from individuals that aren't sufficiently healed. That doesn't mean they have to be completely healed, because things come up for everybody. But that's what it looks like if enough individuals are imbalanced for whatever reason, then the collective suffers. And when even one person begins to work toward balance, it also has a ripple effect in a positive direction.
Yeah. And if does anybody else, would anybody else like to add anything else to that before I move into that next phase?
Yeah. Just speaking in broad strokes, for as far as men go, every man on the planet treats the feminine outside him the exact way he feels about the feminine inside him. Ooh. So the more hurt that is, the more hurt he puts on the feminine outside him, wherever it expresses itself, right? Whether that's in other women or other men or the environment. He uses that framework to build everything in his world. And so the feminine continues to get pushed down. Minorities and women are regularly attacked because that is a threat. That's a threat to them because of how they feel about that within them.
All right. And before actually I will go into the shadow work or the healing aspect of things, I want to touch on this. And I think this is a great panel to do this. And I'm going to start with TJ first. How has your view of your own feminine energy within yourself defined how you look at females as a whole? I know you came up with a lot of women. So how has finding that balance within, or how has your view of that energy played out in your outer world?
Just observing the way that I used to argue or have communications with females or disagreements in that aspect. A lot of times, a lot of quick comment a lot of irrational, catty stuff instead of thinking out the problem, pausing, looking for a rational answer, things like that. Just a lot of screaming, arguing the wrong way when argument would come up with in relationships and things like that. Instead of talking it out more, I've noticed that just in my opinion, in my views, I've noticed that a lot of guys that were raised by females tend to communicate that way. A lot of screaming quicker, a lot of just snap things like that.
All right, and I want to pose this question to the gentleman: How do you feel that the reign of the dominant masculine has really? I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase this, but like coming up in a world that is predominantly masculine. I can speak from a female's point of view how that works for me, but how, as a man, how has that led to how has that influenced your relationship with your feminine energy up till now? And I will open the floor to any man who would like to start.
Okay, I'll go.
Well, when you're younger.
Okay, yeah.
Hold on.
Go, Travis. Go, TJ.
Sorry.
Okay, so when you're younger, a lot of the things that you're trying to do, you're just trying to give the world that masculine view of yourself. You want to be tough or so-called the most masculine person in your circle at times. You want to do the things that are perceived masculine. You want to be that guy, so to say. And that's what a lot of us get trapped in our younger ages. And it's not until you're older and you realize that you don't have to be locked in those boxes, that you can show emotions, you can show a softer side, you can be feminine, so to say, in relationships or partnerships or friendships.
All right. And Bradford, I'd like to, sorry about that. I meant to, yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I mean, kind of echoing what TJ was saying, I mean, when the predominant story in the world is that the feminine is not okay to show, then you have to, you either have to find a way to rail against that and go against the overwhelmingly huge amount of pressure to be part of that paradigm, to have an elevated masculine and hide your feminine and not be vulnerable or weak, by showing any kind of emotion. So you either have to find a way to rail against that, or you have to find a way to fit into that. And neither one is easy. And certainly fitting into the current paradigm and pushing down your feminine energy and squashing all of your emotions and everything doesn't feel good. That's a setup to have a lot of pain. And anything that we push down inside us comes out ugly some way, right? Whether it manifests physically or emotionally. I don't care how far down you push that or how tight you think that box is, you've got it in, it's going to show up, right? So it just causes all kinds of problems in every area of life.
Tomas, I would ask the same question of you.
Yeah, this is from my own point of view. My dad is a Marine, so I don't know if everybody tuning in is from the United States, but if you're not familiar with what that is, you can Google the U.S. Marines, and there's an attitude, and he's 82 years old, still alive, and still very much a Marine, because the attitude never dies. And that was really very interesting for me. I grew up with that, and then I grew up with a lot of women friends as well. And in fact, probably in my lifetime, I'd say about 80% of my friends have been women. And I've done business with mostly women, actually, especially in my line of work, because they're more likely to ask for help. So that makes it that much more likely that those are the people that I'm going to work with. And that's been true throughout my career. So I think that there was a lot of potential for struggle and a lot of potential for me growing up with that really, really intense warlike masculinity, a very, very competitive and very driven, very, in fact, very driven. Very driven. Did I say that? Yeah, very driven. I think that it really, there's a lot of potential for a young person to second guess themselves. And this is true of anybody of any age. There's a lot of potential when you're seeing an extreme of either side. There's a lot of potential if you don't share that same ideal, if you don't share that type of mentality, to second guess yourself and to question yourself, questioning, okay, am I good enough? What's wrong with me? Those types of inner dialogues are something that are really common when you don't completely relate. And in my case, I didn't completely relate with the total masculine paradigm. And I still don't. I mean, my energy's always been both. I've always been conscious of being both, but yeah, I mean, it was intense. Let me put it that way. Intense.
All right, Veronica, I want to, since you are the only other woman besides myself, I would like to switch a little bit and ask, how has it been to be a female growing up in a masculine world and not being and you can correct me if you've been solely in touch with your feminine for a very long time, like at a very young age. But I know from my personal experience that feminine energy was not something that was predominant in the female line of my life. Both on both sides, being in your feminine was not something that was predominantly shown in my family and the people that I was around. It was always that very masculine energy. So I have to ask you, how has your relationship with your feminine been throughout your life?
I was in the same situation. I think we are similar in that respect, because when we need to really decide which of our energy is more comfortable, because one of them would be more comfortable in most cases. So it would never be 50-50. And my primary energy, where I feel more comfortable, is feminine energy. But because I was brought up in a family which is very focused on achievements, I've been always brought up in a society that is focused on achievements, on getting things done, on accomplishing things. And that is, of course, very masculine energy world. And so I'm a feminine energy woman, but I know that rewards and the appreciation of me, because we all need to be heard and seen and understood. So I know that in order for me to be appreciated by my environment, I need to be in my masculine. And what happens when a primary feminine energy woman is trying to stay for too long in a masculine energy, which is not her primary, she can switch, but it's not her most comfortable operating mode. So it always leads, and the same applies to men who are feminine energy and they try to stay in the masculine, and vice versa. Those that are masculine trying to stay in the feminine. If you get a man and put him as a nurse in some nurturing, caring profession and let him do that, 7 days a week, they're gonna feel burnout, in the same way that women would feel burnout operating in a masculine mode for too long. So I have been focusing on a career, being in the masculine world, operating in my masculine, and that wasn't satisfying. It just wasn't something, I just wasn't true to myself. I wasn't really finding a balance. It was just a very short-lived satisfaction, and then I just felt depleted. And only when I actually become very much self-aware and I realized, okay, my most comfortable operating mode is feminine. So I need to stay in my feminine for the majority of time and use my masculine when I need it, when I need stuff done, when I need to accomplish things, but not to stay for majority of time. And that's where I started to apply to my work. And that is where I've actually connected to my true power, because you can succeed in a masculine world even though that people are judged by the masculine norms. I'm talking about the business world and the corporate world, by staying in your feminine. And actually it adds the power and it adds the complementary dynamic to the interactions and the connections we have with people in the workplace. So that for me was a discovery that I've realized. Why did I keep burning myself out trying to adhere to the masculine norms in the workplace, where I could have just become in my most powerful mode and complement what the masculine world has to offer? So that has been my journey in terms of masculine world, but that's, of course, that's slightly different when it comes to relationships.
Yeah, and I can say that's been a lot of my journey. Is I've grown up in where the women in my family were mostly predominantly masculine. That's been the energy that has flown through the female line of my life, of my, I can't think of the word for that. But even coming up, I know TJ on here from working with him in the kitchen, and he can probably attest to the fact that I was probably one of the most masculine women in that kitchen, and that I was very driven, and it was very much like, get it done, like let's, like literally like that. I'm like the physical embodiment of the finger snap in a workplace, I guess. But and so that was what I grew up seeing, and that's what I grew up knowing, and that's how, you had to show up as a woman in the men's world. And that would lead me into my next question is, I would love to have y'all's thoughts on why we believe that the masculine energy has been the most predominant energy thus far. Why we've been in a 7,000 year stretch of predominantly masculine, and what is it about the feminine that has been so threatening to that paradigm? And I'd actually like to start with you, Bradford, on this one, since you brought that part up.
Yeah, well, I don't know why we switched from something that actually valued the feminine, but I don't think that it's and maybe initially it served us well, but in our current state, and certainly in our recent history, the last several hundred years, it has not been serving us well. Probably even, longer than that, but like, in our modern history, you look at how the environment has been treated, you look at the way greed and, corporate structures, and, like, one of the things that I like to say to people is that, no CEO of a company who's in tight, and it doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman, but no CEO of a corporation who is in touch with and has a healthy relationship with their feminine energy chooses to pollute for profit, right? That's just not something that would happen, because that's not what the feminine does. The feminine creates and nurtures. So that would never even be an option for somebody who was like that. But if you, like we've been talking about, this current paradigm devalues the feminine, and the feminine is rising. I think it's pretty palpable. A lot of people are understanding that now, and it's an amazing time for women to really be stepping into their power, much like Veronica was saying, right? But it's very challenging. But like, kind of going back to something that Tomas was saying earlier, that it all starts with the individual. So you have to take that time to figure out what is happening within you, how those energies are sitting, and what your health of those, what your value is that you place on those things, because that is the secret to coming into a balance of those energies so that they both really serve each other.
All right, Veronica.
I wanted to add to that to answer the question why, because you ask why is it the masculine the dominate. I think it's because men traditionally went to work whilst women stay at home and look after children. So we're looking at the traditional gender roles. And because men went to work, they've designed the business, they've designed the corporate world according to their norms, not that they just didn't know any difference. If that's how you operate, that's how you operate. And that's only when women started to enter the workforce where they realized that they have to fit into a masculine norm of operating, because that's how business world was already set up, because it was traditionally done by men. And that's why women find it more difficult to fit into a business world even up until now, because it still runs by masculine norms. Equally as many men now trying to spend more time with families and play more prominent role in the family and parenthood and child bearing, and they also find it challenging, because we although we all have masculine and feminine, it's still pretty much linked to our gender, because there's biological differences, there's physiological differences, psychological, emotional, and so on. So it's not an easy task for both of us to know how to operate in each other's world. So I don't want to blame men for preventing or for not designing their world according to the feminine norms, or equally women didn't design their world according to masculine. It's just not something that occurs to someone naturally. But what I want to emphasize, that neither of the norm is wrong. There's no right and wrong. There's just, I don't want to leave an impression that masculine world is greedy, it goes, it pollutes stuff. It's just, we need both. We really need both for that harmony, because they're opposite, but they very complementing energies. So if someone runs a business and they need a masculine energy to get stuff done, but they also need feminine to create their connections and team engagements and all of that. So I think we need to be mindful not to blame one for suppressing the other or for getting, because it depends where you suppress things. Men could complain that women are in charge of bringing the next generation and instilling the values, and I think it's equally as powerful and as influential. So I just want to bring that balance into the conversation.
Oh, and I appreciate you for that. Thank you. I'm always open to people bringing those pieces. I think that's incredibly important. And that leads me into the last piece. So I want to ask each of you individually, what do you feel is needed for us to go within? Because I think what really came about this panel, this specific one, and I thought was important, is really starting with the individual first, because we hear all the time about what we need to do as a collective and everything, how can we start helping the world out? But really that starts within ourselves first, right? Like we keep coming back to that same point. Everything starts within. So starting with Veronica and going counterclockwise, I would really love to ask each of you, what do you feel is necessary for us to begin finding that balance within, whether that's that 80-20 balance or whatever it is? What do you feel is important for people, whoever's watching this? What would be advice that you would give them to start finding that balance within, so that they can start connecting into those energies and bringing that duality into a harmony? And Veronica, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. So I want to make it very simple for people, really simple piece of advice. So it starts with us, of course. We need to figure out which of the energy is primary and try to stay in the energy for as much as we can. So the easiest way to figure out which of your energy is primary, and by the way, there are tests online that you can find, masculine, feminine tests online. But the easiest way to figure out which one is more primary is to ask yourself, in a relationship, would I rather be respected for my ideas, actions, and opinions, or would I rather be cherished for my feelings? So, would I rather have my feelings cherished by my partner, or would I rather have my actions, ideas, and opinions respected? So, one would be, of course, we all want to be respected and cherished, but one would be more important in most cases. So, when you know, if you are rather be cherished in a relationship, that means that your primary mode is feminine. And if you would rather be respected in a relationship, it means that your primary mode is masculine. And that gives you at least a good starting point. Okay, so I would rather be respected in my relationship with my partner. And that's the next step would be then just to look what that masculine energy represents, and we've already discussed it in detail, or feminine energy represents, and start to get in touch with the energy on a regular basis. Just start to become familiar and connect with it, because, as I said, many women are operating not in their primary energy. Many men do the same. And once we get in touch with our primary energy, it becomes much more comfortable to actually stay in our primary energy and relate to other people as well from that space, which is the most comfortable, the most authentic, the most genuine space of operating.
All right, Tomas.
Yeah, well, as far as what it takes to do the inner work, it's a decision. Pure and simple, that's it. It's a decision to do the inner work, whatever that looks like for you. Whatever form of spirituality you practice, or whether you call it that, whatever it is, it's a decision to be at peace, right? And that starts with yourself. Starts with yourself. So whatever the path looks like, it's something that by walking that path and by observing your reactions and by letting go of things that no longer serve you, by forgiving, by doing all of these things. There are a lot of things that we can practically do moment to moment. But I think it's really important to realize that it starts with a decision, and it's a decision that we have to make every moment of every day, because every moment of every day we're faced with a choice, all right? Am I going to choose peace, or am I going to choose war? Am I going to choose unity, or am I going to choose separation, right? And we have that choice all of the time, and we're often completely unaware of that. So we have to continue to choose again and again. And the more you choose and realize that, you, all of us, are both, we have the masculine and feminine, and a way forward isn't going to be, like Veronica said, blaming one gender or another, or one energy or another for where we wound up today. And I don't know, like Bradford said, I have no idea how we wound up here today. We don't really, I think any of us know that. But what we all have control of is how we respond in the present moment, like right now. That's where the action is. And the more that you choose in favor of peace, the more that you'll begin to notice both sides of your own personality and your own energetic being. And then the more balance you can go on to find, whatever that looks like.
Bradford?
Yeah, and for me, it's sort of similarly to Tomas. Like, for me, it's awareness and choice, right? You have to have awareness of what's happening in your world and how you feel about things to come to a place of choice to actually do something about it, right? And for me, that means you look at the things in your life that either don't work well or feel good. And if they don't feel good, well, then there's something going on in your feminine that is not working for you, right? And if they aren't working well, then there's something in your masculine and the actions that you're taking that isn't resonating. It's not in alignment. And so you have an opportunity then, when you come to that awareness of things not working well or feeling good, to look at what those things are and make a choice about doing something about it. And whether that for you is, meditating or going out into nature or working out. There are hundreds and hundreds of different ways to go about finding a new level of acceptance of yourself in either one of those energies. And for me, while they are polarized, they're also interconnected. You can't operate with one of them out of you can't just have one, right? So it's better to just be like, okay, so this is where my masculine is feeling like it's at. This is what's happening in my world. These are the things that I am doing. And this is where my feminine is at. This is how I'm feeling. This is how I feel about being vulnerable. And if you feel great about those things, fantastic. If it doesn't feel good to you, here's your opportunity.
All right, TJ. Wind us. Oh, are you there?
Okay, so with me pretty much what all of you said, except for how I make sure I keep my feminine in check is just make sure that I always want to be the type of person that when my friends talk to me or female, that they always want to feel comfortable around me and feel like they can relate any emotion that they have to me, any aspect or any way. And with my masculine side, I just want to make sure that when my friends call upon me or anybody in my family, that I can do whatever it takes to be a stand-up guy for them, or emotionally, whether it's emotion or strong or physical, just anything that has to be with a stereotypical man. Just want to be that in all aspects. I try to keep it in check to try to keep those things balanced that way.
All right. Awesome. All right. Thank you guys so much. I've learned a lot from here. I appreciate all of you guys showing up in your most authentic selves and bringing your knowledge to the panel. I know we had a couple comments. Like Connie said, this has been an amazing subject. Never thought much about it, but wow. And I think that that's the important part about this. I learned so much from everybody that comes onto these. And I think that this is something that's definitely important to talk about, because as each of you touched base on, we are at a pivotal shift in humanity. And I think having a good basis of knowledge around the energies that are part of that, whether, however they show up, is extremely important. And again, as you guys just iterated now, it all comes back down to choice and having that choice to understand deeper the things that we have going on within ourselves, which to me in my own life, and I can only speak for that, is the most important thing, is understanding my own personal choice and how I show up in the world and show up for myself. So thank you guys so much for coming on here and being a part of this. I really, really tremendously appreciate all of you for bringing your pieces to it. I think what everybody brought here was so important, and there was just a lot of nuggets within this. So thank you guys so much for showing up. We are at the end of it, so I'm truly appreciative. Thank you guys, everybody, for being on here. For everybody that commented, we had quite a few comments, a lot of deep reflections from this, so that's fantastic. Please feel free to connect with any of the people that you see on this panel. I highly recommend connecting with all of them. I've learned so much from you guys. You guys have, helped me out so much with just coming on here and being a part of this. And even outside conversations, you guys have been tremendous. So thank you guys so much. To my audience, look for our next story episode on Thursday and a continuing of these panels through the rest of this month. So for the next Tuesday and the Tuesday after that, we'll continue talking on this a little bit, because we've really only just scratched a little bit. And I think that there are just different perspectives we can continue to bring into this. So thank you guys so much. If you catch us on the replay, #replay. And I will see you guys on Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And thank you guys so much. I hope everybody has a phenomenal
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. Bye.